Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar about phrasal verbs for money and spending. My name is Charles, and I get the privilege of being your host for today. For those of you who are here with us live, before we get into anything, I hope that you are all doing well. I hope that you have been able to join us live. If not, and you're watching the recording version of this webinar, hello to you as well. I hope you guys are doing well. But specifically, for those of you who are here with us live, I would like to kindly ask you how our connection is at the moment. So, can you hear me? Can you see me? If so, please let me know by kindly saying something in our chat. That way, I'll be able to make sure everything is all right with today's connection. Okay? But so far, it seems that everything is okay. Maybe just say hi, hello. Feel free to go ahead and even maybe let me know what your favorite TV show is of all time. All right? So far, it seems that everything is awesome. That's good. Hello, Greg. Hello, Katarzyna. Hello, Marta. Hello, Joanna. Hello, ZB. Awesome. I see there's a bunch of people here today. I won't be able to go over everyone's name, but if you are here, I see you. And of course, there are some familiar names. So for those of you who do already know me, it's great to see you. I am excited to be here with you. If you have not heard from me yet, and this is our first time together, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you. And let me know, everyone, today, where are we joining each other from? Where are you located now? Maybe let me know in the chat what country or what part of your country you are in, because I will just quickly share mine. So I am currently located in the Philippines, which is a small island nation in Asia. It's up there on your screen for you, or this little country right there next to Thailand, next to China, and those kinds of things. And we are known as a very tropical country. So we have hot weather, beaches, and the sand. So if you like that, maybe add it to your bucket list for the future. So far, it seems that everyone's joining us from the other side of the world. That's awesome. So far, it seems that while I am in this little part of the world, you are in this part of the world. So we are literally on opposite sides of the world right now. We have some people from Lublin, from Warsaw, from Gdańsk, and experiencing the different weather change, right? It's the end of winter for you guys, transitioning to spring. While here in the Philippines, we are going into our hot season. We don't really have multiple seasons in my country. It typically is hot season and rainy season, as most tropical countries are. And right now, we're going into the hottest next 3 months of the Philippines, where it will be around 35 degrees to 40 degrees. So the electric bill will be a little more expensive the next couple months. But it's awesome. It seems that it's an amazing opportunity to be able to connect with you all as we are on different sides of the world. That's amazing. Now, before we get into anything, I know that there are some people who are just joining us the past maybe minute or two. That's amazing. Let's go ahead and quickly explain what exactly we're doing today. We are going to be talking, of course, about money and how we spend it. Whether you're on Poland, here in the Philippines, some part of Europe, America, whatever it is, we all have money and money habits that we have. And of course, we want to learn how to talk about it. And today we're going to learn some basic vocabulary, but connect that through phrasal verbs. We want to understand what a phrasal verb is, how to use it, and be able to understand typically just how to use them in proper context. If you've heard me speak before in a lesson or a webinar, I am a huge believer that using what you learn is so much more effective than just learning things. So we'll take some time today to make sure we practice how to use today's terms. All right? Now, before we get into it, just a couple quick reminders for those of you who are joining us for the first time. If this is your first time joining us for a webinar, we typically go on for around 30 minutes. So that's about a half hour. We started today at around 7:30 p.m. So that means we will finish within the next 20 to 25 minutes, as close to 8 p.m. as possible. And for all of you here live, I encourage you to use our chat where we can interact with one another, go ahead and participate in some activities, ask some questions. It's a complete safe space for everyone. There's no wrong question. There's no wrong answer. Let's encourage one another as we're all here to learn together. All right? So for those of you who just joined in, as I saw a couple more people pop in, we're just about to get started. But before we get into the main idea of phrasal verbs, we're going to do a little activity together to get things going and to participate. What we're going to do is we're going to talk quickly about spending. So there was a study that was done a few years ago where people were talking about where they spend their money. Typically, if we get 100% of our money salary every month, or even in some cases every year, depending on your job, right? We typically spend our money on certain things. And the average was broken down into some of these categories. Most people said 33% of their money was spent on something, 12.6% on another thing, 17% on one other thing, and 5% on another thing. So let's go down point by point and let's participate together, trying to figure out which percentage is connected to which thing we spend money on. Is it for housing, transportation, entertainment, or food? So let me know in the chat, what do you think the average person spent 33% of their money on? Was it on their housing, their transport, their entertainment, or their food? Let me know in the chat. What do you guys think? I'll give a few seconds here for everyone to be able to figure it out. What do we think? Spending 33% of our monthly money. And of course, this changes on each person, right? Some people are in different situations than others while compared to other people. So we're just trying to figure this out, right? So what do we think? The average adult living on their own, do you think they spent 33% on what? For those of you who are thinking it, there's a bunch of people participating in the chat. That's great to see. Actually, people spent around 33% of their money every month on their housing. So that would be for their rent, which is just the money you give the owner of the house every month, or their mortgage, right? When they own a house and they have to make payments to the bank, right? So yes, people were spending around 33% of their money every month for their house, for where they live. Flat, house, mansion, whatever it is. The average was around 33%. Let's try the second one, 12.6. Do we think 12.6 was for transport, entertainment, or food? What do we think? So we're in category number 2. What do we think? Was it for transport, entertainment, food? 12.6, so like around 12.5%. So I see people participating in the chat. That's great. So for those of you who are thinking of 12.6, people were typically spending that on their food budget every month. So this consisted, depending on the person, typically your groceries was around 12.6, maybe some eating out, but your food expenses every month was typically around 12.6 for the average person. Obviously, it might change time to time, inflation rates and all those things. But when the study was done, 12.6 was spent on food. And we got our last two categories, transport and entertainment. So 17% of a person's monthly income. What do you guys think? Do they spend that on entertainment or transport? What do we think? So transport has to do with your either payment for a car or let's say public transportation, Ubers, things like that. Well, entertainment is just going out for fun, right? So what do we think? For those of you who are thinking in the chat, if we spend our money 17% every month, would it be transport or entertainment? People were typically saying it was around their transportation. So typically for things, like I said, you have a car payment maybe, you have gas, or maybe for people who were going around Ubers or whatever form of transportation it is, it was around 17% a month. So that means 5% of their monthly income was typically spent on entertainment based off the average person. Obviously, it might be different for you or me. Our percentages change, right, depending on priorities and things like that. But of this study, we typically see, on average, 33% of our money can go towards housing, somewhere around that. 12.6 on our food, which we need to eat to survive, right? 17% for transportation, while 5% for entertainment, like going to the movies or just doing a fun activity with friends, family, or loved ones. So this just kind of shows where we typically spend our money. Maybe it's identical for you based off your budget, or it's completely different. But this just gets us a little bit an insight on where the average person spends their money, which is quite interesting. So now that we just had that fun little activity, let's get into our main part today, learning some terms. And we're learning phrasal verbs today. So what exactly is a phrasal verb? Well, a phrasal verb is just an expression similar to an idiom that is made of two things, a verb and a word or words. That is what a phrasal verb is. So whether you're an expert in phrasal verbs or this is your first time learning it, now we're on the same page of what a phrasal verb is. And let's break it down into two main parts, all right? So the first part to understand is a phrasal verb is an expression, something that we say that is similar to what we call idioms. If anyone is familiar with idioms, maybe type it in the chat. What is an example of an idiom that you know? So I'll give maybe, let's say, 20 seconds for this, 30 seconds for people to think of what is an example of an idiom. Send it in the chat so we see how much on the same page we are. And I'll send an example as well. All right. So for those of you who are trying to figure out what an idiom is, it's typically a phrase that is used by native speakers of a language that has no logical explanation. Like, for example, one idiom, I sent it in the chat for you all, is to hit the hay. If we hit the hay, that means to go to bed, right? If I look at the words hit, like I punch something or something like that, and the hay is the food we feed for horses, right? That does not mean to go to bed. But if I say that, it is to go to bed. Like Joanna said in the chat, roll up your sleeves. Your sleeves are these parts of your shirts, right? That typically they can go up to your wrist, and you put them up. That's to roll up your sleeve. But that means to work hard. Like what someone else said in the chat, it costs an arm and a leg. It just means it's very expensive. Or what Kasha said, break a leg. Go ahead and do a good job, right? And good luck to you, right? Those are idioms. Those are phrases we have, expressions we have that we look at, and they don't make a lot of logical sense. So we have to learn them. And phrasal verbs are a little easier than idioms because they are made of a verb and a word or words. So they're not too long. They're typically two words put together, maybe sometimes 3 or 4 at most, but they're not long expressions. And they're always made of a verb and another word. Like, for example, let's think of a very popular one. That's to speed up. If I say speed up, that just means to go faster, right? Like, please speed up when driving on the highway. It just means please go faster when driving on the highway. Or, for example, I can say ask out someone. That means to invite them on a date. Like, he was very scared to ask out his crush, right? He was very scared to invite his crush on a date. Those are examples of some popular phrasal verbs. Two words typically put together that there's no logical meaning, but when we understand they are phrasal verbs, we know that there is a meaning behind them. So that's how we connect today's topic about money and spending with phrasal verbs. We're going to learn phrasal verbs related to our finances and where we spend money or just about money in general. So if you have a notebook, I encourage you to take it out. That way you're able to remember and practice these in the future. Because again, they don't make a lot of logical sense. So let's hop into our first one. And that is to get by. If somebody is just trying to get by, It means they are just trying to have just enough money for their needs. If they get by, it means they have enough money for their essential things that we looked at like earlier. They have enough money for housing and food and transportation. But it means they don't have a lot of money to spend on, for example, entertainment or travel or to buy new things. They just get by. Like, for example, if somebody says, it can be hard to get by some months, it just means it can be hard to have just enough money some months. We are trying to just get by, have enough money. Now, when we are in this situation or in normal other situations as well, whenever we talk about money, people always try to tell us to save up. What does it mean if we save up? It just means to keep some money. Like, for example, if you get your salary and you have, let's say, 5% of your money you keep, you are saving it up. Or if you're saving a different percentage, you're just keeping it for yourself, maybe for the future. Like, people often say it is important to save up for the future, which just means it's important to keep money for the future, because any amount is better than no amount, as they all say, right? So if we save up, it means we are keeping our money. Maybe sometimes we are saving up for a specific reason, right? Maybe you have a car you're trying to get or buy a new house, or maybe you're just trying to save up some money for something new so you can go and splash out on it, where you're trying to spend a lot on something. If you splash out on it, you're just going and getting a lot of money and buying something. Like, I can say, he splashed out on a new pair of shoes. It just means he spent a lot of money on a new pair of shoes. So you save up for the future, and if you're saving up for a reason, when that reason comes, you splash out on that reason, right? And if you noticed, splash became splashed. We changed the tense, right? We went from splash, which is just its normal form, to the ed form. Now, whenever we're changing tenses in phrasal verbs, we don't have to freak out too much. The main thing we only have to make sure we do is to find the verb in our phrasal verb and change it to the appropriate tense. So the appropriate tense here is its ed form. So we would say splashed out on. But the rest of the phrasal verb will stay the same. So we don't have to worry about changing the rest of the phrasal verb when we change our tense. We just change the tense, and then the rest stays the same. All right? So keep that in mind. Yes, when the tense changes, the verb of the phrasal verb needs to follow the tense, but the rest stays the same. All right? So maybe we splashed out on a new pair of shoes, so we got to limit our spending for a little bit. So for a phrase we have for that is we cut back on something. If we are cutting back, it just means we are spending less on something. Like, I bought a new pair of shoes, so I have to cut back on spending money on pairs of shoes. Like, I can say, I will cut back on my expenses. It means I will just spend less on my expenses. If you're unfamiliar with the word expenses, those are just things we spend money on. Like we learned earlier, your house is an expense, transportation, food, entertainment is an expense, your Netflix account is an expense. So if somebody says they are going to cut back on their expenses, they are going to spend less on their expenses. But of course, there are some phrasal verbs that are very similar, but have distinct differences that we do have to know. So let's get into that quickly with the next few minutes we have. If we are saying we are going to pay back someone, it just means we are going to pay money owed to a loan. So a loan is money we borrowed. For example, if you borrowed money to buy a car, or you borrowed money to buy a house, or you just needed to borrow some money because it was hard to get by, you have to give the money back. So you have to pay back that person or that organization. Like, I have to pay back my credit. And there's a similar phrasal verb that's actually 100% identical, and that is to pay off. Like, for example, pay money owed to a loan. Like I will say, I have to pay off my loan, or I have to pay off my credit. I have to pay the money back. So pay off and pay back, exact same definitions. But pay off has more than one definition. Like other vocabulary terms, they can have more than one meaning sometimes. When I pay off someone, it means I am paying someone to do something illegal. Like, for example, if somebody says he paid off the referee, it means he gave money to the referee of the game to do something illegal. All right? So I cannot say he paid back the referee, because paid back only has one meaning, of giving the money that you owe to someone, right? While pay off can mean paying back things like your credit, or it can mean to pay someone to do something illegal. And like you see, we have an example of the verb tense change, right? Pay off becomes paid. It's an irregular verb, so it changes, but off stays the same, all right? So keep that in mind. Don't get those two confused with pay back and pay off. We still have maybe two more phrasal verbs to go over. The next one is something we all do if we're going out with friends. Remember, we talked about entertainment, right? Maybe we're going out with friends and we're all doing one activity, but we're all going to pay for it. So we all chip in. It just means we contribute money with others. For example, our friends and I, we went to a restaurant. The bill was, let's say, $1,000. There's 10 of us, and each person's going to pay $100, right? Or whatever it is. Or buying a gift for our friend, and the gift costs $50, and there's 5 of us. So each of us are going to chip in $10. Like, we can say we have to chip in for dinner, or we have to chip in for the gift. It just means we all give a bit of money to contribute for the gift of that person. All right? And the last phrasal verb is to cough up. Cough up means to reluctantly spend a lot. Reluctantly, it means we are not so, I guess, enthusiastic or happy about spending that kind of money, right? Maybe, for example, in a sentence, I can say, he had to cough up some funds for the car. He had to reluctantly spend a lot of money for the car, right? You're coughing it up. You're giving it reluctantly. And like we said, phrasal verbs, they don't make a lot of sense, because cough, it means to go, right? If you're feeling sick, you're going to cough. And up means to go up, right? But cough up put together means to reluctantly spend a lot of money. And that's why we have to learn these phrasal verbs. Like today, we covered around 10 phrasal verbs, but there's so much more. You can practice with your tutor with the phrasal verbs we learned today. There's even a course on the platform connected to phrasal verbs. That way you're able to practice these, because logically they don't make a lot of sense. So it takes that repetition, right? But I hope you all enjoyed so far just talking about where the average person spends their money, terms we use to spend money, because money is such an interesting topic and discussion. It's something we all are going to deal with at different parts of our lives. But I want to leave you all with a great quote. It says, money will buy a pretty good dog, but it will not buy the wag of his tail. Money is a great thing. You can do a lot of things with it, but don't forget happiness and pursuing things with happiness as well, whether that's your friends, your family, your loved ones, your hobbies, and things like that. We're down to the last few minutes of today's web, but let me just give you all a few reminders. Remember how to recognize phrasal verbs. They're very similar to idioms, right? They're those expressions with no logical definition, but they're made up of verbs and maybe one or two other words. And remember the phrasal verbs we learned today about money. Like I said, practice them with your tutor. Maybe go ahead, practice them on your own, but the platform is speaking. It's a great way to be able to do that. And of course, remember learning to use them in proper context. Whether that's phrasal verbs that mean the same thing, but one has other meanings, or using them in the proper verb tense, whatever it is. Practice makes better. The very famous book, Atomic Habits, 1% every day, right? Try to be better 1% even in your English skills every day. As we're drawing to the last few minutes today, we're not done yet. We're still going to transition to a quick Q&A. where if you have any questions about today's webinar, please just let me know what you thought. If there are any questions, anything you'd like to ask. And as we're waiting, there's a poll on your screen that I would just love some feedback on. For today, we have a first poll question of, did you find today's webinar useful? Did you learn something? Was this beneficial? Please let us know, because we want to be able to provide you with topics that you enjoy and that are useful for you. All right, so I'll leave this up for a bit as we wait for maybe a couple questions if anyone has one. Again, there's no wrong or dumb question. Whatever you would like to ask, feel free to go ahead and do that. And I'll run one last poll up. It says, would you like to participate in a similar event in the future? So what's your thoughts? Is this something you would love to join us again for another webinar? Give us a review, a 5-star review, whatever you thought of today's web. That way we're able to continue giving you these kinds of options to learn here at Tutlo. All right, so it seems that everything is all right. I don't see any questions, and we're down to the last minute of today's webinar. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. But before we do, I encourage you to find us on social media. We're present on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Check us out. We provide content on there for you all. And we post some fun facts, some learning tips, and some updates. So check us out on our socials. Until next time, thank you all for joining me. You were a fantastic crowd. Thank you so much for participating in the activities we have and things like that. If you ever have a request for our webinars, just contact your agent, and we would love to be able to suit our topics best with you. So Liza, you go ahead. You can do that as well. I'll let them know. But until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your evening. Take care as always, and goodbye for now. Stay safe, everyone.